The year was 2013. The question was asked, are obesity and climate change connected? Well, as it turns out, according to a new study published in the Times of the United Kingdom, obesity is, in fact, bad for the environment. And it's actually really simple. People who are overweight eat more, creating a higher demand for the creation of food products, the transportation of food products. And I think it's fair to say that there is a general, look, people who are hedonistic or egotistical in general are buying more luxury goods. I think it extends beyond being fat. But for the sake of this segment, we're going to focus on obesity. Now, if you are someone who doesn't care about climate change and you also happen to be obese, you may rest easy with a clear conscience because, well, you don't care about climate change, right? That's fine. I think climate change is an issue, and I am going to put the blame on feminists. Now, you may say, Tim, how are you blaming? Well, hold on. You all know that feminists are basically like people, body positivity. They can be fat if they want. It's not really conservatives saying that. It's actually conservatives who tend to tell people to try and lose weight, though not all of them are fit. I get that. But typically, if you talk to an overweight conservative person, they're going to be like, yep, like, I know. But if you talk to an overweight, leftist, they're going to be like, don't body shame me. Okay, that was mean, but, Here's the thing. I'm not exaggerating. Rise of fat as feminist issue shames dieters into silence. Another story, another study, this time from the Times as well, saying that research suggests that millions of women are hiding the fact they're trying to slim down for fear of being judged or mocked and labeled as anti-feminists. Ladies and gentlemen, fat feminists are making climate change worse. Now, I'll be a little hyperbolic and say they are causing climate change. I don't mean to say they are the sole cause, but they do contribute a whole lot. See, not only do they eat more, not only are they producing more bodily waste, they have a higher demand for goods, and they are shaming other people who are into doing the same thing. There may be someone saying, I should eat less, I should fast, and they say that's fat phobic. And then what ends up happening is they eat more, making climate change worse. And I'm gonna wrap this up, okay? I was planning like a long main channel segment but I decided not to do this. Medicare for all would require obesity laws from the Washington Examiner. You see, the problem with obesity is problematic, man. It causes cancer, it's bad for the environment. And now I'm going to make a very bold statement, and I must say it. I do not believe the left as a whole is a bad thing. I, in fact, think it's a rather good thing. I happen to lean politically towards many leftist policies. I think people like Kyle Kalinske and David Pakman are good people. They are fit, intelligent individuals who I happen to disagree with on a number of issues. I actually agree with them on many other issues. But I will say that the left has some kind of cancerous growth that needs to be excised. Recently, David Pakman did a segment where he said, talking about this woke, outraged left, he described it as, it's not even, you have this highway, right, of the left. And Eric Weinstein says, a hard fork has emerged. And David said, I don't think it's a hard fork, it's not even an exit. It's like a weird off-ramp for authorized personnel only that's like people are driving on. And it happens to be a lot louder, and so it gets a lot more attention. I humbly disagree, but I hear what he's saying. Let's for the sake of argument, I'm going to operate under David Pakman's premise. You have a small sect of very loud, vocal people who are dominating the conversation in some ways. I don't mean they're like the whole conversation, the entire thing. I'm saying certain conversations are clearly dominated by these kinds of voices. Celebrities are embracing this stuff. There are issues. Now, I happen to think it's a lot worse than David says, but for the sake of argument, I'll operate under David's his assumptions and his description of it. And I'll say this. This authorized personnel ramp, only is having more and more people try and stuff themselves into it. They are, and it's becoming what people think they should drive on because you have people like celebrities pointing to it, and it's going to cause a collapse. Now I'll go into my own personal argument and say something bold. This is cancer. I don't mean that in like I'm trying to insult you. I'm not trying to get a rise out of somebody or insult. And YouTube has actually said you can't refer to certain things as cancer. That, to me, is stupid because the idea I'm trying to convey is that there is a group of people who are encouraging other people to be unhealthy, to exacerbate climate change, and to make our healthcare problems worse. There is look, if you can choose to be overweight, I got no problem with that. In America, you want to eat a whole pizza to yourself and drink, a case of beers and watch the game. Do you, man? I get it. The problem is you have a group of people encouraging others to do worse. Listen, man, I know people who are overweight, and never do I go to them and say, looking good, man. Would you like another box of Twinkies? I say, have you considered, getting fit and eating better? Okay, we can, try cutting down on carbs. And most of my friends are like, yeah, I know, I understand. Okay. And that's the encouragement we want to do. We're not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to be mean to any of these people. I'm not trying to shame them and make them feel bad. I want them to feel better. Exercise feels good. Being slim, you'll feel better than you've ever realized. And this makes you depressed and it causes cancer. I'm not exaggerating. There was a big hubbub in the UK because they had a sign that said, the leading cause of cancer is actually obesity or something to that effect. And the fat feminists, and I'm not saying this to insult them, I'm literal feminists who are overweight, complained. You had a billboard ad of a beautiful woman in a bikini and it said beach body time or something like that, beach body ready. And there were big complaints about it. So then some other company runs a bunch of morbidly obese women in bathing suits to counter the narrative. Listen, the reason why I say it's cancerous is not because I'm trying to get a rise out of people. It's because I'm trying to point out it is bad for you. It is bad for the environment. If you're an environmentalist, you need to push back against this because these people are consuming too much. They're contributing to climate change in ways we can't even possibly imagine. And they're encouraging more people to do it. Think about what that is. I am not talking about some stupid insult of the word cancer. It's like it's a bad. No, I'm quite literally saying these people are going to get cancer because obesity causes cancer. It's a contributing factor. They are encouraging other people to be destructive and unhealthy, and it is causing damage to the planet. I don't know how else you describe that. Hedonistic, egotistical gluttons encouraging other people to do the same thing. I am not saying all fat people. I am not saying that every single obese person is doing this. I am specifically referring to a subset of morbidly obese feminists who are hijacking the mainstream conversation and encouraging people to be fat, to accept this. Meanwhile, we have climate change problems. And this brings me to the main focus of the left. Listen, man, this is why I say to David and people like that, you've got to get this under control. Not that I think the entirety of the left is dominated by this, but they're gaining louder. They are becoming larger. Gallup polls show it. Actually, Gallup shows the trend just reversed last year, which is good news for everybody else. So maybe, Dave, you don't got to worry too much about it, and you're going to get your sane left back. I can respect that. But I do think it's important to call this out. You cannot... And you can't simultaneously be like, we need to fight climate change and then go and exacerbate it. These people who are concerned about the climate crisis, who are morbidly obese, are hypocrites telling you to change your life towards the negative while they actively cause the damage. Don't look at me, okay? I turn my lights off. I actively try to conserve and not waste water and things like that. I pay attention to this stuff. But these people are going around telling us what we should or shouldn't be doing while encouraging others to cause damage to the environment. And this brings me to another, argument surrounding the fat feminists. Medicare for all. Look, okay. I should read a little bit of the Times story for you to give you some context, but I want to talk about Medicare for all. And the general idea is you cannot have a welfare state while simultaneously encouraging people to consume and consume and consume and become unhealthy. Okay, it's bad for the environment. So how are you going to advocate for climate change while some of the largest proponents are quite literally the largest proponents? And how are you going to advocate for Medicare for all when some of the largest proponents are quite literally the unhealthiest people in the country? There's an argument to be made. This poor child got cancer. The family couldn't afford it. They're laden now with $100,000 in debt, or they can let their kid die. A terrifying and nightmarish choice. I hope no one ever has to face, but some people do. The problem then becomes you have people who choose to be unhealthy and blame it on everything but themselves and encourage other people to do so and then demand we pay their health care bill. Okay, sorry, you can't do that. That's what the Examiner is arguing. I'll jump to that in a second. But the bigger point is the planet. Let me read. If you can't stay slim for yourself, maybe you should lose weight for the planet. A new study has calculated that obese people are each responsible for more than a ton of extra carbon dioxide emissions a year, roughly equivalent to going on a transatlantic flight. The research published in the journal Obesity finds that in total, the extra food consumed by the world's 600 million obese people has a carbon footprint on par with that of the UK. Their increased metabolism also means that every year they breathe out extra CO2 equivalent to Sweden's annual output. Once the added burden for transport is included, taking into account the fuel needed for planes and cars to carry, heavier load, the University of Copenhagen study calculates that if everyone on the planet attained their ideal weight, it would offset the annual CO2 output of Mexico's 130 million people. You want to talk about overpopulation? They do these arguments. The Guardian, it's time to have less kids because of climate change. No, it's time to stop eating. We can have 130 million more people if y'all would just get fit. Now, again, to those who don't care about climate change, don't believe in it, or don't think man has anything to do with it, if you're overweight, you're probably sitting there with a clean conscience laughing, saying, whatever. I guess in that case, you can point to the hypocrisy of the feminists arguing against climate change and man-made climate change while simultaneously contributing more than 130 million extra people to the CO2 output. The authors of the research cautioned that the findings should not be used to stigmatize overweight people. And I agree. I absolutely agree. My problem is with those who would encourage bad behavior while simultaneously claiming we got to fight climate change. The first thing you got to do to fight climate change. Okay, and this is coming from somebody who raised money for nonprofits. You turn your lights off. Okay, lights off. Don't you get a low flow toilet. Consume less. Recycle. To an extent, some recycling actually is worse. But you want to use biodegradable products. You want to make sure you reduce how much you're consuming. Reduce plastic, buy bigger things that last longer. Do your best, but it starts with you. Run the water. When you brush your teeth, turn it on. Turn it off. Don't leave it running. All of this stuff contributes to increased consumption, fuel burning, and CO2 and all that stuff. The first thing you got to do if you want to fight climate change is change how you live. This is like environmentalist 101. What do we get? Instead, obese feminists arguing that it's okay to be fat, but telling us we have to, arrest the energy executives. It makes literally no sense. Cut down how much you're consuming. And they're also arguing for free healthcare. You don't even get me started, man. So let's do this. Okay, I read this for you, and I want to make a bigger point. Why I said it was cancerous. Because you have people who are continually consuming and consuming and consuming. They are hedonistic, egotistical, self-righteous, demanding, and no one is telling them to stop. I am not saying literally everyone on the left. I am not even saying every single SJW. I am saying there is a subset of fat feminists that are causing extreme damage and encouraging others to do so. We should not be encouraging people to be overweight. It is bad for your health. It's going to cost you more money in the long term. If you choose to be overweight, welcome to America, you can. But don't expect me to bend over backwards for climate change and Medicare for all when you won't do the same. So that's the point I'm making. While I certainly would love to encourage conservatives who are overweight to be healthy because you'll feel better, and it's better for everything I'm talking about, cheaper healthcare, better for the environment, I understand that they're not being hypocritical. There are people who are saying I can choose to be overweight and I do so, and they're saying I don't care about climate change in the first place. Okay, here's what I want to say to that. In my efforts to try and convince you to do better, because I am concerned about climate change, I am concerned about the cost of medicine and everything, I'll just encourage you to the best of my abilities. And I also recognize it's a free country. I believe in freedom, and if I can't change your mind, well, then that's all I can do. I don't believe in using authority and force. But we have a serious problem with hypocrisy and people encouraging others to be worse. At the very least, if you're an overweight conservative or moderate who cares not for climate change, I'll just ask you not to encourage others to do the same. That's about the best I can do. But I think it's a fair point. When it is a known fact, they have repeatedly done this, okay? These fat feminists shaming women. Let me read a little bit of this story and then we'll come to the Medicare part. They say, most British women will go on a diet at some point this year, with January traditionally the most popular month to start. Yeah, because of the New Year's. But a survey of more than 2,000 dieters show that 2 in 5 will try to hide their weight loss plans from at least some people, rising to 2/3 of young women as dieting becomes increasingly unfashionable. More than a quarter of 18 to 34-year-old dieters say they won't reveal they're trying to lose weight because they don't want to be labeled anti-feminist. An even greater proportion say the rise of body positivity, a social movement that champions the acceptance of all body sizes, means they sometimes feel guilty about wanting to drop a dress size. The findings are likely to raise alarm among health campaigners because of the potential impact on the battle against obesity. And now I'll go back to what David was saying. I always like to shout out David because I actually think he's a pretty good dude. I think he's wrong, okay? Not everything. I think he gets some things wrong, and I think he's wrong now. He's saying it is a small subset, and I will say first, he's technically correct, okay? I think it's a matter of interpretation. He's right that it actually is a small subset. The data shows it. 8% of America is woke, far left, progressive, and the bulk of liberals are passive and don't believe this insane nonsense. The conservative wing is 25%, and they're more ideologically aligned. They're more active, right? You're more likely to see the partisan wings are 8% left, 25% conservative, according to the latest. It's a study from last year. It's from Newswhip. No, I'm sorry. It's from YouGov, More in Common. But he's right. Only 8%. The problem is they're the ones who dominate the media, and then the media espouses this message to everyone else. Okay, it was Dove's Real Beauty campaign showing plus size and obese women, and it's gotten worse. It's one thing for Dove to show women of all different body types. They weren't all obese. Some were a little on the heavier side and some weren't. But it escalates from there because no one ever tells them to stop. On the right, Milo Yiannopoulos comes out and he starts ranting about fat people. What do? They ban him. How dare you, they say. Then you get the left saying, get fatter, get fatter, get fatter, even though it's bad for the environment, it's making people unhealthy, and it's driving up medical costs, and no one tells them to stop. The left doesn't know where the line is, and no one is policing this. Why is it that Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, I could get banned for this video? Why is it that they're willing to say, don't tell someone to not be fat, but when someone else literally tells you to destroy your life and make the planet worse, they say that's okay? That to me is psychotic. And it explains perfectly the trend we've seen with the right and the left diverging. If the right so much as steps an inch over on the line or close to the line, they say, ban hammer. The left can screech and say, no, get fatter, be fatter. And they're like, that's great. Really? So why is it that you're not allowed to tell people to do the right thing? This is what I don't understand. Is it because they reject all negativity? No one is allowed to be negative. You know what, man? Equal and opposite reactions. You need balance. There will be people who have hate, and there will be people who have love, and they clash. But if you get rid of only one, you know what ends up happening? It's like the Star Wars. You know what I mean? Eventually, you only have the light side, and then a very powerful evil emerges. There will come a balance. You get rid of all the negativity. You get rid of all the haters, and what's left? It becomes a negative thing. In the beginning, right? Body positivity was good. We have all of these fake Instagram models with Photoshop, and it was a really, really bad thing. I remember when I was like 15 years ago in Chicago, I see these billboards for these really freakishly looking models, and we would all talk about how it's very clearly manipulated. So we all got angry about it. No one ever told them to stop. So what ends up happening? Now we have Instagram reality where women's lips are like this big and everything about their body is fake. And then you have other feminists coming out and saying, don't shame their bodies, eat more. And what ends up happening? It runs out of control because no one's allowed to be negative. So eventually it becomes toxic. This should be called toxic positivity, right? This idea that you have seriously unhealthy things and the mainstream left is championing it. Now, again, I'll throw it to David when he says a small subset. Sure, but they got billboard ads, dude. They got TV commercials for this stuff. The same company that owns Dove, promoting women who are overweight, owns Ben & Jerry's. So, of course, they're encouraging it. This is not going to end well for anybody. So, you know what? I'm willing to bet most people don't care about climate change. Like the average person, they think about it. It's the progressive activists that are really concerned. But if you ended up watching this, the real point is the hypocrisy, okay? You have women right now who won't admit they're trying to lose weight. They want to, but they won't admit it. And fat feminists are calling it fat phobia and thin privilege and all this other insanity. And it's destroying the environment. If the left doesn't say stop, then I think it's fair to call it cancerous. Because it keeps growing, it keeps consuming, it's hedonistic and egotistical, and it's encouraging others to do the same even when they actively try to resist. How will we ever achieve Medicare for all, for those that want it? I think it's a great thing to strive for. Can we get it? I don't know. I kind of lean towards no, and this is one of the reasons why. We can talk about the cost. One of the contributing factors is the fact that there's too many overweight people. There's just too many. So what do? Pass a physical fitness test? I don't know. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. You may have noticed I switched back. I think youtube.com/timcast, my like flagship channel, needs to be just strictly a single big news story, because I was originally planning on doing this for my main channel, but there's a lot of reasons why I can't. And it's not necessarily censorship, it's structure, it's quality. On this channel, I really just don't care. I say whatever, and I grab whatever stories. I don't care if the video does well or not. My flagship is what's allowing this to exist. So I think from a business perspective, there's a clear delineation between what the channels are. So whatever. Stick around. I'll see you all at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out.